On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla and EV podcast, a new report out of China says that Tesla is planning a smaller version of the Model Y. Plus, a new software update lets you check on your car's battery health. The Cybercab gets one step closer to operating on public streets in California, and more. What's happening, friends? Alongside a snoozing Daisy the Boxer and an also snoozing Mind of the Future Service Dog, my name is Ryan McCaffrey. Welcome to the 503rd episode of Ride the Lightning. It's your weekly Tesla and EV podcast. This one's releasing on March 23rd, 2025. I'm recording this Friday night, March 21st. Well, as expected, when I mentioned this at the top of the podcast last week, I, in fact, did see my first new Model Y out in the wild this past week. I was on FSD on the freeway, heading to my allergist's office, and I was in the middle lane, and I look a couple lanes over at one point, and there was a beautiful, brand new Quicksilver Model Y with the temporary paper new car plates. Boy, I will say, Quicksilver suits the new Model Y very, very well, in my humble opinion. I know color is subjective. Everybody's got different paint colors that they like and don't like, but I think the new Model Y really looks nice in that Quicksilver. Interestingly, the driver of this new Model Y did not have the taillight bar turned on, which was a bummer. It was daytime, so that was a little bit of a bummer. I didn't get to see that out in the wild, but it still looked very nice even without it. Also happening this week outside of my world and in the world that you care about, which is the greater Tesla world, Tesla live streamed, kind of at the last minute, live streamed its Q1 employee all hands meeting. I went back and watched it. I caught it a little late. I watched the whole thing, and there honestly wasn't really anything newsworthy in it. Elon kind of played the hits, talking about how the Optimus could be the best-selling product of any kind ever, and how autonomy is going to be huge, and just everything that you've heard before. So I decided not to pull any clips from it. There's not really much to talk about, nothing newsworthy in my humble opinion. But if you'd like to go watch it, you can do so on either Tesla's YouTube channel or their X page. Getting things warmed up this week, here's a fun new little software feature that's being added to version 2025.8.3. This software update brings a feature out from service mode to consumer mode, aka just out there in your car for all of us to use. Tesla has introduced a long-requested feature. I saw this story on Drive Tesla Canada, who writes, with this update installed, again, it's 2025.8.3, owners can now easily run a battery test to measure battery health and energy retention directly from the main user interface. One of the biggest concerns from Tesla owners, both new and old alike, is around the health of their high-voltage battery. This concern often arises when the displayed range, either in percent or in miles per hour, deviates from the advertised range. While this discrepancy is more due to changes in driving habits and environmental conditions than a distinct change in the battery's overall health, owners are still left wondering how much their battery has degraded over time. And I'll just add on my own note here that if you're a new Tesla owner, first-time new Tesla owner, I will warn you that you will see the most battery degradation in the first year of ownership. And after that, the degradation slows to pretty much a crawl. I'm not a chemist, I'm not a battery engineer, but that is my understanding of just kind of how the battery chemistry of these battery cells works, is you'll see the most degradation in year one, and then it'll slow down pretty good after that. But, getting back to this feature, which I applaud the heck out of, being able to go in and test your battery health, I guess Tesla didn't want customers poking around in service mode, which people definitely have done to check this, where, in service mode, you could potentially do something bad if you click the wrong thing. And Tesla certainly doesn't want people to do that. So now they're just bringing this feature out from behind the curtain and out onto the main stage, from backstage to the main stage for end users. And honestly, there's no downside to this. This is great. I mean, if you think about it, I'm an iPhone user. Apple puts this very feature in front of its users on iPhone. So there is certainly a precedent for it. I imagine that Google does with Android as well. And it's unprecedented for the EV space, but I say, again, I applaud Tesla. More transparency is always a good thing for your users. So if you're considering buying a used Tesla, this is going to be something that you want to go in and check prior to signing on the dotted line to purchase a pre-owned Tesla. And if you already have a Tesla, well, you might want to just check this once you get this software update to see how your battery's holding up. And if it's not, you can take a look at, taking it in for service and or changing your charging habits depending. But whereas before, you'd either have had to go into service mode or you'd just never known the state of your battery. Now, personally speaking, I'm not worried about either of our Model 3s at this point in time, but I am absolutely going to run the battery health test on both cars as soon as each of them gets this software update because, well, why wouldn't I? It'd be interesting to see the result. The new car, I should hope, shows like 100% or 99% battery health, and I'll be more genuinely curious about the 2018, about the Spirit of Adventure. And I suspect most of you out there are going to run this battery health check when you get the software update too. Again, just out of curiosity, why not? Heads up, the Tesla notes, it's in the software update notes, the release notes, I should say. Your car will need to remain plugged in for up to 16 hours in order to complete the diagnostic. This is not a quick thing. So I imagine most of us will run this overnight. Before I get to this week's main story and the rest of this week's Tesla news, I wanted to mention this week's lightning round mini episode over on Patreon. For those of you kind enough to be backing me at that $10 per month tier or higher, that's the most popular tier. This week's lightning round was about the story of my up-close encounter with one of 3 24-karat gold-plated DeLoreans ever made by DeLorean Motor Company. Yes, you heard that correctly. The stainless steel DeLorean, made famous by Back to the Future, there were 3 of them that were made 24-karat gold-plated, and I got a very up-close and personal look at one of them very recently. In fact, it was on my trip to Reno to interview J.B. Straubel for episode 501. So if you'd like to take a listen to that and listen to me geek out about DeLoreans for a little bit, you can check that out on Patreon. If you're not already backing me on Patreon, I would be humbled and grateful if you would consider doing so. Hopefully you enjoy the podcast every week. You enjoyed those 3 great interviews for $4.99, $500, and $501. And if you do sign on to the Patreon, you get early access to each week's episode. You get an ad-free episode, and that's at any tier of the Patreon. If you go to that $10 per month tier, you get the early access, the ad-free, and you get access to all 130-something of those weekly lightning round mini episodes. You can find all the information, see what all the tiers are, all the perks stack the higher you go. So check it out on my Patreon page, which is found at patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. If you'd rather pledge once a year rather than every month, there is an option for an annual pledge. And if you're kind enough to do that, I'll give you a 10% discount on that annual pledge. So again, it's patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. Our main story this week is a big one, or should I say, a 20% smaller one. Tesla plans a Model Y costing at least 20% less to produce to defend its market share in China, sources say. This comes via Reuters, who says Tesla will make a lower cost version of its best-selling Model Y in Shanghai three people with knowledge of the matter said, aiming to regain ground lost during a price war in its second largest market. The U.S. electric vehicle maker is developing the model under a project codenamed E41 and will build it using existing production lines, the people said. Mass production will begin at its biggest factory by output, which is Shanghai, next year in 2026, said two of the people. So far, I'm gonna just call time out for a second. So far, you're like, so what? Tesla reduces costs on their cars all the time. It's sure they're making a 20% cheaper version to produce. That's not news. Well, let's punch back in here on the time clock and let's get to the rest of the story, because here's where it gets good. Reuters continues saying the car will be smaller and cost at least 20% less to produce than the refreshed Model Y launched late last year, two of them said. The Model Y, a mid-size SUV crossover, retails from about $36,000 and change in China. The Shanghai output will be mainly sold in China to defend market share, one of the people said. The model will also be produced in Europe and North America, the person said, without providing a time frame. Tesla's intention to make a lower-cost Model Y, led by its China team, was first reported by 36KR. The project name and size of cost reduction are reported here for the first time. Tesla CEO Elon Musk said in January Tesla would introduce lower-cost models in the first half of 2025, but did not elaborate on the size of cost reduction, pricing, size, or specification. The Model Y was China's best-selling car in 2023 and 2024, but is seeing strengthened competition from domestic peers who have launched at least 6 rival models in the past year. Well, a couple of things to start with here. First, I had to read this story twice because the first time I read it, I thought they were talking about the vehicles that I've been referring to as the Model 2.5s. And second, while this is an unconfirmed report officially, I am taking this as close to fact as I can without it coming directly from Tesla themselves. And the reason for that is because Reuters has a tremendous track record in reporting on news out of Tesla in China specifically. Remember, Reuters was the first to break the news of both Project Highland, the Model 3 refresh, and Project Juniper, the more recent Model Y refresh, and both of those stories came out of Tesla in China. So Reuters, for me, has established a lot of credibility here. But anyway, kind of getting back to commenting on the news itself, I admit I am still confused about this, because if it's a smaller car, is it still a Model Y? And what will differentiate it from the Model 2.5s, which, as we've established, is going to be multiple vehicles? That is official from Tesla. One of which I expect will be, granted it is speculation on my part, I expect one of them will be a compact crossover SUV, because a mid-size crossover SUV, or put it another way, a mid-size crossover Model Y that's 20% smaller, well, 20% less to make, I guess, but smaller. If you're smaller than a mid-size, you pretty much are a compact crossover SUV by definition at that point, aren't you? So maybe I'm just wrong about the Model 2.5s, right? I mean, maybe one of them isn't a compact crossover SUV. Maybe it's a compact sedan and a smaller, more traditionally styled pickup truck. Because again, we know that the smaller, cheaper cars, that it's plural, that it is more than one vehicle. We know that. So the question is, what are those vehicles? And this story this week kind of throws my theory for a loop. I mean, if the Model 2.5 or one of them is still a compact crossover SUV, then does this smaller, cheaper Model Y follow it next year per this report. I mean, it says this is a next year thing. Or maybe it is still a compact sedan and compact crossover SUV, and there's no smaller traditional pickup truck. And this is the Model 2.5, and only one of the Model 2.5s, presumably the sedan, is going to start production in a few months, as Tesla's been talking up on the last couple of earnings calls now. Regardless, though, this smaller Model Y is happening for China next year, if you are to believe Reuters' report, and as I already mentioned, I do. And though that Reuters report focuses on it being designed by and intended for the Chinese market, we all know that Tesla doesn't do regional vehicles. It's not to say they won't ever do it, and you might already be raising your hand or screaming at your device going, "Hey, Ryan, what about the Cybertruck? That's pretty regional." And you would be correct about that for now. But we've had plenty of smoke in the air about the Cybertruck going global for a good little while now, including most recently on last week's podcast, where, as you'll recall, we heard from a Tesla employee speaking very uncharacteristically, openly, and optimistically about the Cybertruck coming out in Australia. So, in short, I would bet on this smaller Model Y being available globally, even if it makes its debut in China first, as the Highland Model 3 did in 2023. And certainly, I mean, that's what the Reuters report says, that it will also be produced in Europe and North America, in the other factories. So the question then becomes, how do they position it against the regular Model Y? Does the Model X go away and the Y becomes the higher-end model? Well, that I would say probably not. The thought crossed my mind, but I quickly struck it down in my mind because I'm basing that on what Lars Moravi said to me in my interview with him just 1 month ago, that the X and S are going to stick around. Now, obviously, a smaller battery in this smaller Model Y, and thus less range, is the single biggest differentiator that there is in this situation. I mean, it could be a 250 to 275 mile range LFP battery pack that's only maybe 55, 60 kilowatt hours. I mean, that would help a lot with reducing the cost right there. And if this smaller, cheaper Model Y is still going to be called a Model Y, even though it's not at all the same car, maybe the Model 2.5s won't get their own unique names. Or at least maybe the compact sedan won't. Maybe it'll still be called the Model 3 when we get this new, smaller, cheaper car introduced in just 2-3 months here. I mean, it's certainly not unheard of for a vehicle to have multiple body sizes in a line. The Toyota Prius, just before its recent total redesign, where it's a very nice car now, in my opinion, at least a lot nicer than it was, the Prius had the regular Prius, the smaller Prius C, and the larger Prius V. So it's certainly a thing that other car companies have done. It's just not something that Tesla's ever done before, of having multiple body sizes in the same model. But maybe if that's what this is, if in fact this is part of the Model 2.5s and then we're going to get the sedan in 2 or 3 months, maybe they'll be called the Model Y Compact and the Model 3 Compact, and they will keep the 3 and the Y names. I don't know. I could make a case for that, and I could make a case against that. I mean, the biggest case against it would be just freshening up the lineup, because one thing that's been pointed to in terms of Tesla's sales slumping a little bit, one of the factors, is that the models have been kind of stale. You know, the Model Y, prior to this refresh that's just happened and just started delivering, was 5 years old. The Model 3 had been, 6 years old from its introduction to its refresh. And people want new cars to look at, to consider, to buy. So that would lead me to think, well, maybe it doesn't make sense to keep the Y and the 3 and add these in as different sized variants. But, there's also the fact that the 3 and the Y are both established, very successful cars, the Y especially, of course. And so that would be a good reason, a good argument to not give them new names and to, in fact, just call them 3s and Ys with some other maybe moniker to designate them attached to that, like the word compact or Model Y C or Model 3C, something like that. But as you can hear from that rap that I just gave, I'm asking a lot more questions than I'm answering about this. I mean, to me, this is a really fascinating turn of events. Even for me, a crazy person that follows this stuff like an amateur detective. But I've done my best to give my best educated analysis and speculation in response to this. I would be very happy, by the way, to hear your best theories on this as well. Do you think I'm on the money? Am I missing something? Feel free to call in. Let's talk about this more on next week's podcast. But even just going through all of that, and as I record this, I'd already made my notes, but as I say it all out loud, I think that this might be the Model 2.5. That's what I'm leaning towards here, and that instead of introducing two of them at once, which was my assumption, well, we know what assuming does, but yeah, my assumption had been when Tesla confirmed that it was multiple vehicles, that they would both be introduced at the same time. But certainly Tesla's never introduced two vehicles at once before, especially something so high volume like this, like what this vehicle is intended to be. The 2.5s are intended to be higher volume than even the Y by quite a lot. Remember, 4 to 5 million per year was the stated production goal from Tesla on these lower cost, more affordable models. So the more I sit with this and say it out loud, the more I think that Reuters has basically just cracked the code on part of the Model 2.5 equation, and that the car we're going to get, that'll be unveiled maybe in a month from now, maybe 2 months, and is supposedly going into production in 3 or 4 months, I think maybe that's going to be the sedan only for this year, and then next year it will be the compact crossover SUV in the form of this smaller, cheaper Model Y. We'll see what happens. This next story involves 3 former guests of this podcast. The teardown titan, Sandy Munro, went on down to the Tesla design studio and did a video with Tesla's vice president of engineering, the aforementioned Lars Moravy, as well as friend of the podcast, Tesla chief designer Franz von Holzhausen, about the Cybercab. And there was one particularly interesting factoid about Tesla's upcoming autonomous robotaxi, and that was its pack size and its range. Take a listen to this.
So I have a question for you. Okay, so what kind of range do you think you're going to have on this vehicle?
It's an interesting question.
Because it'll be a guess, I'm sure.
Yeah, at this point, we want to make sure that our cars last, the robotaxi can last the full usage of a day without having to recharge too much. So we got a lot of models going around, trying to figure out how a typical robotaxi would go, pick up someone, go to the next job, whatever. And we think that we can do that with quite a small battery pack. It's under 50 kilowatt hours, and still have over close to 300 miles of real world range.
Well, the pack size is honestly not that much of a surprise. The Cybercab is just not a large vehicle. But what is surprising is the range. Lars saying almost 300 miles? I would interpret almost 300 as 285 plus. I would have guessed that the Cybercab's using an LFP pack, And the reason I would guess that is because LFP can be safely charged up to 100% every single time. But LFP packs, even though I know I just admitted, shocking news to all of you, I know, I'm not a battery engineer or a chemical engineer, but I've been doing this podcast long enough to have learned that LFP packs have a much lower energy density, and thus you need larger batteries, more space to achieve your range. So maybe it's not LFP. I don't know. Whether it is or isn't, what we can be certain of is the insane efficiency of the Cybercab. If it's got a battery pack that small and still gets upwards of 300 miles of range, regardless of whatever the battery chemistry actually is, that is a ridiculous miles per kilowatt hour number. I mean, we know the car is going to be exceptionally light. Remember, Lars on this podcast talked about the unique painting process and how the panels are plastic. That alone will save a lot of weight, and we know that Tesla will take every tiny little efficiency and fraction of efficiency that they can, and it will add up to a tremendous overall efficiency. I gotta say, I just can't wait to learn more about this car on a technical level, and I hope I get to ride in it again soon too. In fact, speaking of the Cybercab and speaking of riding in it, in California, where I am, Tesla is now one step closer to the Cybercab becoming a reality, at least here in California to start with, along with Austin, Texas as well. Saw this written up on Drive Tesla Canada, who writes, the California Public Utilities Commission, CPUC, has granted Tesla a transportation charter party carrier permit. While this approval does not yet authorize fully autonomous rides, it is the first of several necessary approvals needed for Tesla to establish a ride-hailing network. With the approval, Tesla is now allowed to operate company-owned vehicles with human drivers under specific conditions. Initially, Tesla will use the permit to transport its employees on a prearranged basis using Tesla-owned vehicles. Tesla has indicated plans to transition to providing rides to the public in the future and will notify the CPUC once it begins public operations. While Tesla now has a TCP permit, the company has not yet applied for a Transportation Network Company, or TNC, permit, which is required for ride-sharing services that connect drivers with passengers through a smartphone app. Tesla's application does not seek participation in CPUC's autonomous vehicle passenger programs, meaning the company's not yet approved to offer driverless rides. The TCP permit alone does not grant Tesla authority to operate autonomous vehicles for commercial service. To launch a driverless fleet, Tesla must first secure the necessary AV permits from the California Department of Motor Vehicles, which it has yet to obtain. Thank you to Drive Tesla Canada for the thorough explanation of the permitting process there and where Tesla stands in it. And as you can tell, there are a lot of steps, regulatory steps for Tesla to go through here in California. But then again, these vehicles need to be able to handle anything in order to safely transport humans without anybody behind the wheel, or in the case of the Cybercab, any wheel at all. I mean, they are also, by the way, going through all the same steps that Waymo had to before they began offering driverless rides here in San Francisco, which they now offer them in Los Angeles as well. I got to watch it up close when Waymo was going through it here in San Francisco. First, there were humans in driver's seats of all of those LiDAR hat-wearing Jaguar I-Paces. Then there were no humans in those I-Paces at all, meaning they were verifying driverless performance, but without any passengers in the car to inconvenience or worse if anything went wrong. And then, finally, there were what we see now. Driverless Jaguar I-Paces wearing LiDAR hats. They are, when I say they're all over San Francisco, I am not exaggerating. They are everywhere here. You will often see 2 or 3 of them in a row going somewhere. They are absolutely all over the place with paying customers in the back. I've taken it several times myself. It's going to be really cool to watch Tesla go through this now, assuming that they do validate their driverless scenarios and driverless Teslas of all kinds, Cybercab and otherwise, in San Francisco, which quite frankly, not to be a homer here, they should do it in San Francisco because there are so many edge cases, so many difficult, strange scenarios here with the roads and the intersections and everything, that, quite frankly, it's a high degree of difficulty in San Francisco. And thus, if it can do it here, it can probably do it just about anywhere else, at least as far as California goes. But it is exciting to me personally to have a front row seat for this. Now, obviously, the second I'm able, I'm going to go take a driverless Tesla ride. And I will, when I get to do that, I will eagerly report back to you when that finally happens. And it seems like it might not be too far away. There's still several regulatory steps to go, but they are making progress. Now, with all of the Cybercab talk this week, I decided to make it the subject of this week's Patreon poll, which, unlike the lightning round mini episodes, anybody, whether you're backing me on Patreon or not, can vote in each week's Patreon poll. I open them to the public. I just want you to stop on by and cast your vote each week. Typically, the new poll goes up on Tuesday evening, but you can swing on by patreon.com/Tesla podcast anytime you like and cast your vote in each week's Patreon poll. This week's question was simply, will you buy a Cybercab? Because Tesla has said that we'll be able to buy them. It's the smallest Tesla, which could be appealing to a lot of people. It has the biggest center screen of all the Teslas, which could be appealing to plenty of people, and the most lounge-like interior, which I can vouch for, having gotten to ride in one myself at the unveiling. So I simply asked, will you buy a Cybercab? 55% of you voted no. I'm not interested in buying a Cybercab. 24% of you went with maybe. It depends on the details like the cost of the Cybercab, the revenue share split, etc. 13% of you said yes, I'd buy one or more for both personal and income generating use. 5% of you said yes, I'd buy one or more to use exclusively as an income generating vehicle with others riding in it in the Tesla network. And then just 3% of you said yes, I'd buy one to use exclusively for myself and or friends and family. So the volume of these, Tesla has forecasted a very high volume. It's not reflected, the interest for a high volume of these, not reflected in this poll. But then again, I would venture a guess that most of you hearing this, myself included, are not fleet operators. So maybe that's where all the sales are going to go, to fleets. But 55% of you saying no thanks, not interested in buying the Cybercab. Again, thank you, though, to everybody that kindly took the time to vote in this week's Patreon poll. Next up this week, Tesla has submitted homologation applications for Model 3 and Model Y in India. Another tip of the cap to Drive Tesla Canada. They were on it this week. They wrote, Tesla has taken another significant step toward entering the Indian market. The company has started the homologation process for the Model 3 and Model Y to ensure compliance with India's safety and emission standards ahead of officially launching sales in the country. Homologation, if you're curious, is a mandatory certification process in any country that verifies a vehicle's adherence to national regulatory standards covering things such as safety, emissions, and overall roadworthiness. According to a report by local media publication IANS, citing industry sources, Tesla has officially submitted their application for homologation approval for the 3 and the Y in India, paving the way for Tesla's market entry. This application is the latest in a series of steps Tesla has taken to finally enter the Indian automotive market. The automaker initially registered its Indian subsidiary, Tesla India Motors and Energy Private Limited, that's a mouthful, in 2021, signaling its intent to establish a foothold in the country. However, challenges such as high import duties, which previously stood at as much as 110%, posed significant barriers. However, recent policy shifts by the Indian government have rekindled Tesla's interest. That interest grew further after a meeting between Tesla CEO Elon Musk and the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, earlier this year. Now, I will say this. This is a meaningful step towards achieving the Battery Day 2020 goal of getting to 20 million cars sold per year. India is a big market, quite possibly the largest market in the world that Tesla's not already in. Although I will be honest with you that I thought it was much bigger than it actually is. I went and looked this up because I didn't want to just jot that down as a note without double checking. And it turns out in 2023, so pretty recently, 4.1 million cars were sold in India. 4.1 million. Now, for context, 13.6 million were sold in the US in 2022, which was the most recent figure I could find. So quite a discrepancy, but still, even though India is a very populous country, but still, if Tesla can get in there and over time grab, say, 5% of India's market, which I realize is far easier said than done, that would be 200,000 cars sold per year, which is a not insignificant number. So it's a pretty safe bet that it's going to be the 3, the Y, which obviously are what's going on now, and then the Model 2.5s that get sold in India, probably not the S, X, or Cybertruck. But again, plenty of opportunity there in that market, so Tesla is readying their entry. Next up this week, yes, I'm still going, some not so good news next, but I'm going to mention it for a specific reason because it reveals an interesting figure. All of the Cybertrucks made up through the end of February are being recalled for an issue with the cant rail, aka the top of the triangle above the doors, the thin stainless strip above the doors. I saw this one on Teslarati, who writes, according to the NHTSA report, the Tesla Cybertruck recall potentially affects around 46,096 units. Select units of the 2024 and 2025 Cybertrucks have cant rails that, quote, can delaminate and detach from the vehicle. The report says Tesla service will replace the cant rail assembly free of charge. Owner notification letters are expected to be mailed on May 19th. Owners may contact Tesla customer service. Tesla's number for this recall is, well, it doesn't matter. The recall affects 2024-2025 Cybertrucks manufactured from, here's the key part, November 13th, 2023, in other words, the very start of production, to February 27th, 2025. Tesla first became aware of the potential issue on January 7th of 2025 during a routine monitoring of field repairs. At the time, it became aware of a field complaint relating to partial delamination of the cant rail stainless steel panel. By January 13th, so less than a week later, Tesla launched an engineering study to investigate the issue. In early February of 2025, the engineering study's inspection and pull tests concluded, quote, no detections of separation. But then on March 11th, Tesla decided to voluntarily recall the Cybertrucks due to the cant rail panel detachment issue. It later determined that 151 warranty claims might be related to the issue. Fortunately, the issue has not resulted in any collisions, injuries, or fatalities. Now, the Cybertruck, all the Teslas have had recalls. Every car on the market has had recalls. But the reason that I bring this story up, what's notable to me here isn't the recall, which certainly on paper isn't great, But as you heard, no collisions, injuries, or fatalities. But since the recall affects vehicles made from, as I said, the very start of production, November of 2023, through the end of February of this year, that means it's every Cybertruck except what's been built this month. And so that means that up from the start of production through the end of February, Tesla's only made 46,000 and change Cybertrucks. Now, I recognize that the production ramp for Cybertruck isn't forecasted to hit full volume for still another few months. They had said it would be the middle of this year, and full volume, just to remind you, is supposedly 5,000 per, at least per previous definition of this at Tesla from Model Y, from when they ramped up Giga Texas and Giga Berlin with the Model Y. Full volume is 5,000 trucks per week and 250,000 trucks per year. Now, Tesla was obviously nowhere near that pace last year because the ramp was happening. They were starting from almost scratch at the beginning of 2024, and they ramped all the way up to the point where they felt ready to go into general production in early October. So I'm just speculating here, but to me, if we're only at 46,000 Cybertrucks so far, and we're a year and 4 months, well, okay, with the recall, a year and 3 months, so a year and a quarter, 5 quarters in, and we're at 46,000 Cybertrucks per week for a vehicle that's supposed to be getting up to 250,000 per year, 5,000 per week. That seems like there's a bit of a demand issue going on with Cybertruck, more so than a production one. And I believe the primary reason for that, and I will say primary, not necessarily only, but primary reason for that, which I've said before, it's the price. That's the bottom line. The price just has to come down. Refer back, again, to my New Year's prediction show for when I talked about that, and I have said now a few times, I think a price cut is coming soon. And in fact, I would think a price cut would have to happen by the time Tesla hits 5,000 Cybertrucks per week, that maximum production rate, because there clearly isn't demand for 250,000 Cybertrucks per year at the current prices, $80,000 plus. Which makes sense. This is not a knock on the Cybertruck because there isn't demand for anywhere near that many Model S's or Model X's per year either, and those are effectively $80,000 plus cars. So when you look at that, it's like, yes, the Cybertruck price has to come down in order for Tesla to be making and selling 5,000 of them per week, 250,000 of them per year. So I don't know anything. I don't have any sources on this. It's my gut saying stay tuned for that price cut. I just really think it's going to be soon. And the final news story I have for you this week is sort of an other EV news story, but it involves Tesla as well, so I'm just going to throw it in right here. Tesla and Rivian's charging networks have the fewest problems by far, according to Consumer Reports. And this is really, we can capitalize by far and underline it and italicize it because it's not even close. Saw this story on TechCrunch, who wrote, the most problem-free EV charging networks in the US right now are the ones built by Tesla and Rivian, according to a new survey from Consumer Reports. The publication surveyed 1,230 owners on their EV charging experiences between March of 2024 and February of 2025, and just 4% of respondents said they experienced problems at Tesla's supercharger network, and only 5% said they experienced problems using Rivian's Adventure Network chargers. If you're curious, owners had the worst experience with Shell's Recharge Network, having reported a problem, this is not a typo, 48% of the time. EVgo and Blink chargers were similarly troublesome, with owners experiencing problems 43% and 41% of the time, respectively. Other well-known networks didn't perform too well either, with owners logging problems at Electrify America 35% of the time, and at ChargePoint chargers 24% of the time. Rivian and Tesla were the only networks in single digits. Consumer Reports said that the most common reported problems across all networks had to do with making payments and with the charging station hardware itself, especially with the screens. Quote, by calling out broken screens, payment issues, and slow charging power, community members are crowdsourcing data that will hold charging networks accountable and improve drivers' experience with public charging, Consumer Reports campaign manager Drew Tower said in a statement. Well, I say kudos to both Tesla and Rivian. Their numbers should be the rule, not the exception. Unfortunately, it seems to be the other way around right now. And at the same time, both, even though that should be the norm, both Tesla and Rivian should be proud of those terrific results. That's great. I mean, in a vacuum, just taking everything else out, 95% of effectively, I don't want to call it uptime, but a 95% satisfaction rate, essentially. 95, 96%, those are excellent. And they're especially great when you do take them out of a vacuum and compare them to everyone else. And I'll say to that end, for as much praise as Rivian and Tesla deserve here, Shell, EVgo, and Blink, quite frankly, should be ashamed of themselves. And you know what? No, I'm not going to put Electrify America and ChargePoint in a better category here. I'm going to lump them. Everybody that's not Rivian and Tesla is getting sent to the doghouse here. None of their numbers are acceptable. And quite frankly, in my humble opinion, all of those non-Rivian and non-Tesla numbers harm the EV movement. And the reason I say that, and I believe it is not hyperbole to say that, is because consistent reliability on these fast chargers, that is what we all need in order to make people feel more comfortable making the shift from gas to electric. Shell has a problem, presumably that problem meaning in some way, shape, or form you can't charge, whether it's because the charger just isn't working or the screen isn't working or the payment or whatever. Shell has a problem at half of its stations, 48%. That should be a fireable offense for whoever is running Shell's recharge network. I mean, forget about the awful consumer experience that is for just a moment. And if you just look at that from Shell's perspective, it's a pretty lousy use of Shell's resources. If for all the money that they've spent on their recharge network, only half of what they paid for works at any given time. That is ridiculous. And then you've got 4 in 10 EVgo and Blink chargers having issues. That's pretty darn bad. Electrify America, 1 in 3 has a problem. That's shameful. Even ChargePoint, 1 in 4, still embarrassing. All of these companies need to do better, much better, for the entire EV movement. Tesla and Rivian, keep up the good work. You guys are not in the doghouse. Thumbs up, round of applause for you guys. All right, that's everything I have for you in another busy week of Tesla news. But stay tuned. I'll be right back with some of your phone calls in the Ride the Lightning hotline coming up right after this.
Hi, this is Franz von Holzhausen, and you're listening to Ride the Lightning with Ryan McCaffrey, the Tesla unofficial podcast.
Before I get to the Ride the Lightning hotline, let me mention my friends at Accelerate Auto and their XCare extended warranty option for your electric car. Accelerate Auto is redefining the EV extended warranty. They're not thinking outside the box. They have crushed and disassembled the box and built a geodesic dome instead. But looking ahead and building for the future isn't anything radical. It's what innovative organizations do. That's why these folks developed xCare. And by these folks, I mean these ex-Tesla employees. It's a comprehensive extended warranty designed exclusively for electric vehicles. They also re-engineered the entire customer experience. And you know how bad that can be in the wrong hands. Note, if you just want to cover your high voltage battery in your drive unit, your vehicle may qualify for this coverage as well, or you can add that onto a general policy as well. Best of all, because you're a Ride the Lightning listener, you get $100 off when you select xCare's one-time payment option. Use the discount code LIGHTNING. Okay, as promised, it is time to hear from all of you in the Ride the Lightning hotline. If you've got a Tesla-related question, comment, or discussion topic for the podcast, feel free to call in and leave a message anytime. There are two easy ways to do it. Either use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, record your question, please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less so that I can get to as many callers each week as possible, or call in and leave a message on the Ride the Lightning hotline itself. It's a toll-free number that you can dial anytime, and that number is 1-888-989-8752. That number again, 1-888-989-TSLA. And if you know someone special with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of recorded voices from friends and family telling them why they're special. The recordings can be podcasted or put onto a keepsake. Visit lifeonrecord.com to learn more. First up this week is Hubert from Austria commenting on the Model 2.5 vehicles, the upcoming more affordable cars from Tesla.
Hey Ryan, this is Hubert calling in from Austria. I'm just listening to your episode 489 and the segment about the Model Q, as Deutsche Bank calls it, or the Model 2.5, which is your way of calling it. And I just had a brainwave about that, and I want to share. So my take, and I boldly call it Model 2, is that how can you make it cheaper? The Musk way, which is the best part is no part. So how can you delete parts? I think we're going to end up with a model consisting of the battery pack, two castings, 2 doors, and possibly 2 seats, maybe 4 for kids. But I think by reducing doors and reducing size overall, you will end up with a massively cheaper to build vehicle because it's a lot simpler as well. And that would also differentiate it enough from the Model 3 not to Osborne effect that. So let me know what you think. Thanks for all the work you put in. Love listening to your podcast. And I'll hear you soon.
Hubert, I appreciate you calling in to share your thoughts on what is probably going to be Tesla's single biggest focus for 2025. No, not the new Model Y, but the Model 2.5. And you make a great point about part reduction. You are absolutely correct that reducing the number of doors would simplify things quite a bit. And your point about that being an effective differentiator from the Model 3 is well taken too. I suppose the only thing that would give me pause about your hypothesis is the other Model 2.5 vehicle, the one that maybe we just talked about earlier in this episode, the one that I believe to be a smaller, compact crossover SUV, since again, we know that the Model 2.5 is more than one vehicle. It is a product line. It is at least 2 cars. The car could have 2 doors, certainly, and still have a +2 back seat, but a compact crossover SUV couldn't. It would have to have 4 doors. So I'm not saying that you're wrong at all. Maybe the car is in fact a 2-door, but with the SUV, they find another way to reduce costs and differentiate it from the Model Y. Again, that's if it's not the Model Y that Reuters reported on as the main story that I talked about earlier in this episode. I think your thought process is dead on, though. How do you delete as many parts as possible in order to simplify production and thus speed it up and make it cheaper both in terms of parts costs and manufacturing cost? Thank you so much for your call. Dave from Yorktown, Virginia is next.
Hello, Ryan. This is Dave from Yorktown, Virginia. Just finished listening to your latest podcast and definitely agree with the ability to modify or override the Tesla's autopilot, to make a left turn when maybe it's not wanting to make a left turn. So adding to that, I think the really cool thing would be if it would be voice activated. So that if you're going along and you want to take an early left turn, you just say, Spirit of Adventure, please take a left turn now, or take a left turn on such and such street, or a right turn. And then, as you were mentioning, being able to have different options to navigate to where you want to go. And if you don't like the navigation path that your Tesla has given you, you can hit the voice activate button and you can say, Spirit of Adventure, I don't like the navigation path you're taking. Please choose another one. It would bring up another option, and then you could tell Spirit of Adventure, I like that one. Please take it. Or if you don't like it, you can tell it to choose another. And I think a lot of that is really possible with the voice activation controls that Tesla currently has. So I think that would be really cool to have more voice activation kind of for overriding and bypassing and customizing. Have a good one. Thanks for the podcast. Bye-bye.
I love it, Dave. I love everything that you just said. It'd be like having Kit from Knight Rider, minus our Teslas not being able to talk back to us, at least, well, not yet. It'd also just make it more fun to use FSD because you'd be interacting with your car in a different, intelligent way. I know the point of FSD is to not have to interact with your car, but I still love your idea. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate it. I've got time for one more call this week, and it is from Bob in Castle Rock.
Ryan, this is Bob from Castle Rock. Thank you for all the work you do to make Ride the Lightning such a great podcast. I drive a 2023 Model Y. Several times I've left behind my phone in the car when going grocery shopping. My son told me that someone had recently called in about this issue, and I understand the fix may not be easy, but it is a serious security issue for any Tesla owner. Could there be a seat sensor or a door close sensor which would trigger a second audio alarm if I walk away from my car without my phone? I usually listen for the door's lock sound, which may mean that I've left my phone in the car, but I would like a second or louder audio alarm if I've left my phone. Perhaps a phone left behind the alarm could work with the locked door sound. Leaving car doors unlocked is not nearly as frightening, at least for me, as leaving my phone, which is my keys, for a potential thief. If a second alarm idea is not possible, a partial solution would be for me to have the option of increasing the volume of the present door's lock sound, especially for us who do not have 25-year-old ears. Thank you.
Very constructive feedback for Tesla here, Bob. I think you raise a real issue, and it's something for Tesla to think about, and you've given some solid suggestions as well, which I think is great. If anyone wants to build on this, I invite you to call in or write in. I'll throw in one idea to get things started. Maybe for those folks who have an Apple Watch and the Tesla Watch key, maybe the Tesla app on the watch could know that it's separated from the phone, whether you have the cellular watch or the one that requires a phone to pair with it, and set off an alarm? I don't know if that could actually work or would work, but just a thought. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate you calling in. Thank you to everybody that took the time to call in, and I welcome everybody out there to give me a ring if you'd like to call in and potentially be featured on the podcast. If you've got something to say, you've got a question, comment, or discussion topic, I do invite you to drop me a line using one of the two easy call-in methods that I gave you at the top of this segment. So refer back to that if something's on your mind. Next up, I will tell you what's been going on with both of my Teslas this week, as well as your pro tip of the week coming up right after this.
This is Bill Daniels, the voice of Night Industries 2000, or KIT. You're listening to Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast. Happy electric motoring.
I am loving that William Daniels bumper, the voice of Knight Rider. By the way, thank you to kind listener Oliver Bornfelt for the audio cleanup on that bumper. He reached out after I first played it and said, hey, if you want me to do a little touch-up on that, I'm happy to do it. Send it his way, and real quick, he had it right back in my hands, sounding even better. So, Oliver, thank you so much. The kindness and generosity of the Ride the Lightning audience and the greater Tesla community just continues to amaze me. I love it. Well, as for what's going on with my cars this week, I took my new car, the Soul of Adventure, down to an optometrist appointment the other day, and I realized as I was sitting there getting my eyes dilated, which is the least fun part of it. I know it's first world complaint, right? It's not painful, it's not a big deal. It's just, the sun's bright. Everything is bright for a while. But it made me realize, hey, here's another maybe less thought about use case for full self-driving, is when you get your eye checkup at the optometrist and they dilate your eyes and everything's super bright, even with sunglasses, you can just activate FSD and the car will take you home and watch your back. And if you're having if you're struggling a little bit because everything's super bright while your eyes are dilated, FSD's eyes are working perfectly fine. So that's exactly what happened for me, because the last eye checkup I had was 2 years ago. I had lucked out and I got a clean bill of eye health last time in 2023. So he said, well, come back in 2 years. And this time again, my LASIK continues to hold. I got LASIK, if I've never said this on the podcast, my parents got it for me as a college graduation gift 23 years ago. It'll be 23 years in May. And so it's coming up on 23 years. I still have 20/20 vision. I would say to anybody out there, if you're a candidate for LASIK, it is the best, in my humble opinion, the best money you could possibly spend on yourself. It is awesome. And eventually I'm going to need reading glasses. He actually said, yeah, your right eye's just starting to slip a little bit. Next time you'll probably need to get just those over-the-counter reading glasses. But 20 plus years of 20/20, actually for quite a while it was 20/15 vision. So man, I am so grateful. That's probably the best gift I've ever received. In fact, I don't even think there's a probably needed there. That is the best gift I've ever received, is LASIK. Anyway, FSD, it helps you after your eye checkup when you get your eyes dilated. So yay, FSD. Oh, and the reason that I mentioned 2 years ago is because 2 years ago, FSD was nowhere near as good, particularly on the city streets versus freeway, as it is now. So it's like now, here on version 13. What are we? I don't even remember what I'm on. 2 dot something, or yeah, right? 13.2 something. It's awesome. It's just turn it right on as I exit the parking garage and go into the sunlight, and it just took me right home. It was fantastic. And then what's happening with the other car, my wife's car, the Spirit of Adventure, our 2018 Model 3 Performance. Well, I picked my daughter up from an after-school activity, and I got home, put the car in park. Of course, this car lives outside now, so put it in park, and as soon as I did, in fact, I think, before I'd even got out of the car, I got a push notification on my phone that said, 12-volt battery needs replacement. Please schedule a service appointment. So the car knew, and I know that Tesla added that functionality a good few years ago now, because I've had one 12-volt battery replacement in that car so far. It was exactly 6 years ago, in March of 2019, when I got my FSD computer, my upgrade from the hardware 2.5 computer that the car came with to the hardware 3 computer. And that was back in the very beginning of those upgrades when Tesla hadn't really dialed it in yet, and it still took them a while to do it. And my 12-volt battery died or like right at the end of that process. Like as I picked up the car with its new FSD computer in it, and I went to leave the service center, the screen came up that said 12-volt battery needs replacement. So I put it right back in park, got out, and thankfully they just put it right in right then and there, so it was not an inconvenience at all. And then 6 years went by, which from what I can tell out there online, 6 years is a pretty long time for a 12-volt to last in an early build Model 3, right? A 2018 build. The newer Teslas, all of them, have... well, actually, I don't know what the Cybertruck's rocking with its 48-volt architecture, but the S3, X, and Y all have a 16-volt lithium battery that's supposed to last, I think, a lot longer. So hopefully in the new car, the Soul of Adventure, I won't have to worry about it either for a long, long, long time or maybe ever. I don't know, but got 6 years out of the 12-volt in the Spirit of Adventure, so I can't really complain about that. And at least it didn't leave me stranded. It gave me warning. And I'll say to Tesla's credit as well, I put that service request in at like 6 p.m., something like that, on a Thursday night, again, after picking my daughter up from an after-school activity. And then I was able to schedule the appointment right away, and I'd put 12-volt battery in there, and they can see the error codes from the car. And they let me schedule. I was able to get it in the next day, which was today as I'm recording this. So in under 24 hours, they got me in, got the 12-volt battery replaced. So that's great service. I want to shout out Tesla San Francisco. Ivory was the name. He was the gentleman that was my service advisor on this one. Even got me a loaner because it had also spit out an error code for the parking brake. And so when I dropped it off, Ivory was like, yeah, this will hopefully be done end of Monday. Parking brake could take longer. So they kindly arranged. I had a Model 3, I think what was a 2019 Model 3 dual motor long range loaner, which was totally fine. It was great to have a loaner at all. And of course now, the settings just, your cloud profile just sets everything exactly how you want it. So which I talked about the last time I had a loaner. So that was all fine. And then, I expected to have this loaner through the weekend, which was why I was grateful to have the loaner. So we would have 2 cars over the weekend instead of 1. And right at 4:30 p.m., I got a message saying car was ready to go. Went and picked it up. Turns out that the error code for the parking brake was just a result of the 12-volt battery being toast, being on its way out. So they swapped the 12-volt, and all the other error codes went away. The parking brake was fine. So yay. It means it costs me less money. Now, I have my XCare extended warranty plan that, I'll be completely honest with you, I don't know if it covers the 12-volt battery, like if that's in the class of tires or brake pads. I'm going to find out. I'm going to put in a claim for it with XCare and see if they cover it. And if they don't, I would understand that. The 12-volt battery is basically a consumable, so I would understand if they didn't cover it. But if they did, I also could understand that maybe they will. So I'll find out. I'll find out in the next couple days here. But anyway, had some interesting action with both cars this week. One helping me out at the optometrist, and the other needing a 12-volt battery after 6 years, and Tesla taking care of me really, really quick. Very grateful for that. If you'd like an entertainment recommendation for this week, I will give you a video game recommendation. I will confess, there is an asterisk here. I haven't had a chance to play it yet myself. I have a copy, and I've got to sit down and play it this weekend, but the reviews are good. The word around the campfire at my day job at IGN is good. And that game is this week's big new release, Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's been a little while since the last major Assassin's Creed game. So the new one is, by all accounts, very good. And in fact, we called it great. We gave it an 8 out of 10, which we call an 8 great, a 7 is good, a 10 is a masterpiece, a 6 is okay, and it goes on down the line from that. So I'm looking forward to firing up Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'll be playing it on my Xbox Series X. It's also available for PlayStation 5 and PC, so check it out if you're interested. And now back to all things Tesla. Here is your Tesla Pro Tip of the Week. It's from Dave in Georgetown, Texas.
Hey Ryan, it's Dave from Georgetown, Texas, just north of Giga, Texas. Second-time caller, long-time listener. Hey, a few weeks ago, I heard you complain about the navigation on Tesla not taking you the way you wanted to go, and I've been annoyed with that as well. What I worked out as a solution is I drop a pin along the route that I want to take and then delete it before I get to it so that it keeps me going the direction I want. One of the problems I had was to delete it, I had to do it manually with the edit command. But I just recently discovered you could say edit route, remove first stop, and it would delete it for you with a voice command. Doing it with my finger was always uncertain while the car was moving. Thanks, hope this helps somebody.
Dave, I want to say a huge thanks to you because this is a great hack that I think absolutely qualifies as a pro tip. I'm going to try this the next time that my car doesn't want to go the way that I prefer on FSD through the navigation system. Good thinking on your part here. I mean, this should work great until Tesla gives us a more integrated, streamlined way to do this, which I hope they're going to do at some point. So, Dave, thank you again. Love this one. If anybody else out there has a good Tesla Pro Tip of the Week, I would be delighted if you would call in and share it with me and your fellow Tesla owners and enthusiasts. And the way to do that is simply to call in, just like the regular Ride the Lightning hotline call, and to get the instructions for that, refer back to, I don't know, whatever it was, 10, 15 minutes ago at this point, where I gave you the 2 methods for that. So thank you so much, Dave, for your excellent pro tip this week. Before I wrap up, I just want to give a shout out to some friends of Ride the Lightning that my hope is they'll be of use to you sooner or later. Starting with abstractocean.com, they've got so many great aftermarket Tesla accessories and even some non-Tesla ones, some Rivian stuff as well. So check them out, abstractocean.com. You'll find a lot of lighting kits, different colored lighting, brighter lighting, just all kinds of stuff. Badging, they've got a lot of cool exterior badging stuff. Just a whole smorgasbord of great aftermarket accessories for your Tesla that I guarantee if you take a look, you're going to find something where you're like, oh, that'd be fun or that'd be nice. So the custom tempered glass screen protectors that use Gorilla Glass, like there's definitely something you're going to like there. So if you end up taking a look, pile anything that you like into your online shopping cart, and when you get to checkout, use the coupon code RTLPodcast at checkout to get your 15% discount on your first order. Again, that's RTLPodcast, all one word, no spaces, at abstractocean.com. Next, the Snap Plate and the newer, stronger Snap Plate Plus. This is the front license plate bracket that is a nice minimalist design. It won't get in the way of, well, your paint, number one, unlike the license plate frame, the front license plate frame that Tesla gives you, which sticks to your paint with automotive tape, so that if you ever want to take it off, good luck. Good luck getting it off without doing something bad to your paint. So the Snap Plate does not touch your paint. It mounts up in a much clever other way. So it's paint safe, grill safe, radiator safe, and autopilot safe. Won't get in the way of any of that stuff. Nice, clean, minimalist design, and you can take it off fairly easily if you want to, like if you're detailing the car, you're taking it to a Cars and Coffee, whatever it is. But it also goes back on fairly easily as well. And when it's on there securely. So the Snap Plate is safety optimized with breakaway features to sacrifice itself in a worst case scenario like a parking accident or a car wash. The Snap Plate Plus, if you're curious about the difference, That one is strength optimized with hardened features for maximum strength. Both have that signature minimalist aesthetic that blend in really nicely with the front end of your Tesla. Both are made from recycled, made in the USA plastics with stainless steel reinforcements. You can get yours at everyamp.com/RTL, and the Every Amp folks are now kindly offering a discount for you as well if you use the coupon code RTL. Meanwhile, Immaculate Reflections, incredibly talented professional automotive detailer here in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. If you're going to be in this neck of the woods with a car that you care about, whether it's your Tesla or something else fun in your garage, I wholeheartedly encourage you to book an appointment with Immaculate Reflections, whether you want to do paint protection film on the key areas or even all of the car potentially, whether you want to do paint correction to get your paint finish looking as absolutely pristine as possible. Maybe you want to do ceramic coating because not waxing your car for the next 3 to 5 years or more sounds really good, because ceramic coating is a next generation version of wax, basically, and it will last 3 to 5 years or more. I am in the or more category with the 2018 Model 3 Performance. It is, that ceramic coating is still going strong all these years later, so super worth it in my opinion. But any of that, all of that, whatever you want to do, Immaculate Reflections will take great care of you. I promise you that. And they offer a Ride the Lightning listener discount. So to take advantage of that, go to the website, which is irdetailing.com. You'll see a contact form there. When you fill out that contact form, mention that you're a Ride the Lightning listener, and any work that you do have booked in will be given the Ride the Lightning listener discount. So love that. Thank you to Jeff at Immaculate Reflections for continuing to extend that gracious offer to my audience. And then one more time, the Patreon, I mentioned it near the top of the show, but I'll mention it one more time here. The Patreon is the primary way that you can choose to support the podcast. Patreon, if you're not familiar, it's a pretty established platform at this point. It's been around for a good 7-8+ years. I mean, I've been on Patreon for, oh no, I guess it's more than that. I think Patreon's been around more like 10 years now. Anyway, Patreon's a platform where people that support a creator, whether it's a podcaster like me or a painter or a writer or a poet or a musician, you can pledge your support on a monthly basis to that creator, and there's usually some sort of little gift in return, basically, as I guess one way to phrase it. And in my case, as I mentioned earlier, every tier, so no matter what tier of the Patreon you support me at, because there are several tiers, but all the tiers get early access to each week's show and get ad-free versions of the episode posted exclusively to Patreon as well. And if you jump up to that most popular $10 per month tier, you'll get those two things, and you'll get access to all of those weekly lightning round mini episodes. So I'd be humbled and grateful if you took a look at some point. The website is patreon.com/Tesla podcast. Patreon is spelled Patreon. I'm actually supporting a creator that I love on Patreon right now, which I think I've mentioned them once or twice at some point. It is a local business, and as many of you may know, I have a lactose intolerance. It was an adult onset thing, hit me at about 30, 31, and so I can indulge in dairy from time to time with the Lactaid tablets. And I've been doing that with my pizza making habit. My wife got me the Uni pizza oven. But day to day, I try to stay dairy free because I just find it makes me feel better that way. And so a small business that I love just joined Patreon, Donut Farm. They're a local business. They make amazing donuts in all kinds of great flavors, and they're dairy free. And they're so good, I would put them up against any donut that has dairy in it. That's how good Donut Farm donuts are. And on their Patreon, I think it's the $10 per month tier, which is what I'm at. They will offer you, they'll ship you donuts. Like, that's sort of their incentive to get you to jump on the Patreon. So anyway, I'm a Patreon user myself, in addition to a creator on Patreon. So if you want to join mine, patreon.com/Tesla podcast. Take a look sometime if you get a chance. Finally, if you are not already following this podcast on your favorite podcast service, I encourage you to do so. It's totally free, and by clicking follow on your favorite podcast service, it means that every time there's a new episode of Ride the Lightning, which is every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, you'll get a push notification on your device reminding you to go listen to that new episode, so you don't have to think about, wait, when is the new Ride the Lightning? Wait, have I heard this one? Yeah, your following will take care of that. So on whatever podcast platform you prefer, statistically for most of you, it's Apple Podcasts, but I'm also on TuneIn, Spotify, YouTube podcasts, etc. Just search Ride the Lightning Tesla, and you should find me, no problem. Click follow, and you're good to go. I should also mention the referral program has returned, and it's that Model 3 amazing $2,500 discount I talked about last week. That is no more, but still you can get $500 off a new Model 3. You can get $500 off of an inventory old Model Y for any of those that are left. There's no referral discount available on the launch series Model Y, so that's no go on the referral there. But if you want to go, if you're looking at an S, X, or Cybertruck, ordering with a referral link will get you a $1,000 discount. So the point is, if you're buying a Tesla, use somebody's referral link, whether it's mine or somebody else's. If you'd like mine, it's in the description of the episode, but it's also this, ts.la/Ryan73014. Just type that into any web browser on a mobile or desktop device. That'll take you to the Tesla Design Studio page, a landing page where you just click if you want S3, X, Y, or Cybertruck, and you configure your car. You'll see on the configuration page, you'll see the referral discount. And when you submit that order, you'll have that discount baked in. Lastly, you can follow me on 2 social media platforms, X as well as Instagram. I have the same username on both, and that username is DMC_Ryan. Because, of course, as you were reminded for the 7 millionth time earlier on this episode, I used to have a DeLorean. Yes, really. And so that's why I chose the Twitter handle that I did way back when I first joined, what is now X, DMC_Ryan. You can also email me about any Tesla-related anything. That email address is teslapodcast@gmail.com. Please try not to be like the person that emailed me this past week that called me a something bad that I don't even want to repeat here and wished death upon me. Like, actually said, I hope you die, because that's the state of that's just how where some people are at right now. So thankfully, that's a one-off. Most of you are really nice when you email me. Lastly, as promised, as part of their Patreon perk, I want to say a hello and thank you to the top-tier Patreon backers. Starting with the maximum plaid tier, big thanks to Jonathan Wales, Cameron Clark, Daniel Grummer, Seth Capello, Nick and Tony, the Galpin family, Ryan from New York City, Darren Nickel, Kaz Barnes, Brett Libano, Patrick Wisniewski, Gil Cabrera, Todd Badger, Joe Edgel, Kevin Yank, the Tesla Owners Club of San Joaquin Valley, Will Stedman, Justin Perez, Jeremy Harris, Chris Beach, Tom Mills, Corey O'Donnell, Aaron, John Cody, Joel Sapp, Paul Casarino, Richard Corley, Chris Osborne, KB, Adam Lavoie, Jason Chalukas, Travis Krenzel, Bruce Otterstein, Tom Behan, Josh Pennington, John from Cream Ridge, New Jersey, Dustin Hart, Derek Finley, Charles Clement, Adam Christie, Damon Klein, Jeff Brown, Jerry Slinger, Clayton Goodfellow, Michael Mizrahi, Kenneth Corbett, and Brian Bertoglio. Next up, the Roadster in Space tier backers. These folks are way up there in the stratosphere of the Patreon. Big thanks to them for their extra generous support. They are Pete White, Lyle Austin, Steve Radspinner, Fernando Cordero, Lawton from Chicago, Sean Neidig, Neil Weaver, Jackson Wallace, Rolf and Jennifer Evers, Howard Anthony Smith, Victoria Iacovetto, Tesla Hitchhiker 42, Carol Weston, Robert from Near Philly, American Home Contractors, GetAmber.com, Doug Carey, Rav, Michael Gallo, and Tony Figueroa. And last but certainly not least, the grandfathered in Plaid supporters. This tier is officially not available anymore, but these kind folks continue to pledge at it, and so I'll continue to give them all the perks that they should get, like having their name shouted out. So thank you, George Cassiopo, Logan Willis, Peter Chalet, Eric Randolph, Dory and Steve Guberman, the Tesla Owners Club of Taiwan, Ron Lee, Charlie Gillespie, Jeff Angwin, Chase Cabanillas, the Lydia family, Aaron Altschul, Jared Brown, Jerome Strack, Jamie Dalton, Mike and Barbara from Louisville, Matt Nixon, the Tesla Owners Club of Wisconsin, Ish, not Elon Musk, in quotes, Peter, and the Bear Boys of Colorado. And that brings us to the end of Ride the Lightning episode 503. I will just give you the heads up that I will be away with my family for a spring break trip next week, but I've got something that I hope is going to be really fun prepared for you. So I'll have that out extra early to the Patreon backers next week. And of course, for everybody else, it'll go live when it always does, every Sunday. It'll be Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. So look out for that, and then I'll be back just in time for the Q1 production and delivery numbers to come in. So 504 will be hopefully a little special, a little fun, and then I'll be back with you, quote unquote, live for episode 504. But again, this podcast does not take a week off. Even if I'm away, I always make sure I've got something good. Well, I hope it's good. It's up to you to decide if it's good. I've got something new and original prepared for you. Let's put it that way. No recycled stuff. So it's I will be away, but hopefully you'll enjoy what I've got prepared in my absence. With that, for two snoozing dogs. Oh yeah, they're both out pretty cold here. In fairness, it's quite late. I'm ready for bed myself. Happy electric motoring, my friends, and I will see you back here next week.
Elon Musk, people don't like Elon Musk. The guy founded PayPal and Tesla, and people are like, yeah, but he's a troll and a bad dad. I'm like, so was mine. He did nothing to fight climate change. Also, have you been in a Tesla? Have you been in a Tesla? My buddy let me drive his Tesla. I laughed out loud at how fast it went. Been clinically depressed my entire life, on dozens of medications, in a Tesla for 13 seconds, cured forever.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be. Our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. It's maximum fun.